Shalom and welcome to Jerusalem Studio. Around 15 to 20 years ago, the world's defense organizations, military services, and intelligence agencies started exploring the challenges and opportunities of cyber operations, and Israel was among a handful of leading nations in this innovative domain. However, others have now caught up, and the relatively new field of artificial intelligence is generating more excitement than the presumed Israeli excellence in both offensive and defensive cyber operations. The latter did not prevent the October 7 atrocity from taking place, which was perpetrated by an enemy far less equipped. So was cyber a passing fad, overtaken by now other advancements in technology, or is it still an art relevant in today's world and just waiting for the right circumstances to showcase its full capabilities? Joining us to dissect those questions and more are Colonel in Reserve, Professor Gabi Siboni, who is the CEO of the Jerusalem Institute for Strategy and Security and one of the leading contemporary experts in the field of cybersecurity. It's good to see you, Colonel.
Hello, hi.
Also joining us is no other than Brigadier General in Reserve Yaron Rosen, formerly the IDF Chief of Cyber Staff, an Israel Air Force commander, and a fighter pilot. It's great to see you as well, General.
Good to see you, Jonathan.
And with me here in the studio is our TV7 editor-at-large, Mr. Amir Oren. Amir, set a stage for us.
Well, our viewers may be acquainted with the system in the United States, where Cyber Command, is dual-headed with the National Security Agency and the Central Security Staff of the military. The same four-star general is heading both of these activities. In Israel, cyber, at least after our guest, General Rosen, headed the cyber staff, cyber was separated. One function remained with intelligence, the other went to the C3, communications, computers, and command and control. And some critics say that because cyber remained with Unit 8200 of the Intelligence Directorate, the tail, that is cyber, started wagging the dog of SIGINT and of alert, which used to be the core function of intelligence. So, as you say, on October the 7th, the Israeli excellence in both offensive and defensive cyber was of little use. And the question is, are we going to recover from it? And can future wars be either avoided or won based on cyber?
We can't limit it only to the 7th of October conflict, of course. Many people were talking about the fact that Russia, being a very significant cyber force, nonetheless has little use during its lengthy war with Ukraine. But let's focus on our theater first. General Rosen, we'll start with you. Mr. Owen just laid it out. Would you characterize it as such? And to what degree is the cyber component within today's trials and tribulations, with many actors, both state actors and non-state actors, seeking to target the state of Israel proper?
Cyber warfare isn't theoretical. It's an active, very active operational battlefield. In today's global tension, when you add critical infrastructure into this game, critical infrastructure is not collateral anymore, collateral damage. It is actually in the front line, and that poses very high risks for nations which are advanced, such as Israel, the United States, and Western democracies writ large. But when we want to look at how warfare is conducted generally, I always explain that when in the phase between wars, like kinetic wars, cyber has a very important role. Cyber warfare is used to collect intelligence. It's part of a very very important part of how nations collect intelligence, espionage. The United States just uncovered a huge operation by the Chinese last December 24 on the Treasury in Washington. This is part of how countries operate. They always operated spying on each other, and you continue spying until you get caught, basically. But when it goes to warfare and effects and hitting critical, very important infrastructure, such as critical infrastructure, whatever that is, and there's a very wide definition of that, it becomes a very important part of warfare. But again, when you have, let's say, the Houthis now, cyber warfare is important in that area of operation in a very different way than it is now between, let's say, Iran and Israel, where the kinetics are in a lower, or there's a bigger, longer span of time between kinetic operations. Then cyber warfare becomes much more important. Again, there is intelligence operations, which are supposed to go on all the time. It's part of how nations gather intelligence on each other. There is defense operation, which is how you defend your capabilities. Everything, it relies on the C4I, actually, not C3, Amir. And there is attack. And actually, the attack part is the smallest part because it is very complicated to hold operational plans on infrastructure with a red button. That's how you call these operations, because they have to be covert until the moment you actually press the button. So it's a cyber warfare is a very wide definition. There's a very wide definition and many operational parts in militaries and between nations and agencies and so on and so forth are part of all of this warfare.
Thank you, General Rosen. Professor Sibone, I'd like to hear your take on this as well, but also if you may relay it to us in layman's terms, since the general public is, of course, in most cases, tuned in and tapped into cyber-related services, and therefore the first and foremost type of attack, so to speak, on critical infrastructure or those type of services is the denial of service, something that, of course, touches each and every one of us at some point during the course of our lives. But within that context, this is merely one component and potentially the easiest component to deal with in a much larger scale of challenges that also General Rosen just relayed to us.
Well, thank you, Nathan. To go back to what happened on October 7th, you see that Hamas was practically did not use, and I mean maybe in the marginal use, did not use cyber operations during this attack. And look at the devastating results. Well, again, I always say that on September 11, what 19 people did with backpacks, no cyber attack could have done. So what we have to understand that though it is developed, though Yaron, me, we all make a living out of it. We are yet to go to see, to compare anything to the kinetic part of our conflicts. And look what Hamas did with people coming on with horses and carriages or whatever to the envelope of Gaza. Now, intelligence-wise, we failed to get enough information on the attack. Not we had 80 to 100 had a lot of intelligence. Okay, we had problems with SIGINT, with mainly our SIGINT is practically 90% cyber. We had problems, but we had enough information. We did not have the other intelligence that is very needed, the human intelligence. We did not have it. The Internal Security Service have just published their lessons learned or whatever, their review on what has happened. They did not have a single source in Gaza, human source. So as much importance as we give to the cyber domain, we have to understand that still we live in a kinetic world. Still we need human sources for good intelligence. And when we fail to have them, look what happens. And our intelligence bodies are practically a huge SIGINT operation. Most of it is done by electronics and computers. And also our visual intelligence is done in the same, satellites and everything. And we fail to utilize our human part of intelligence. And this was a big failure that we had. And I don't know how many reminders we need. So we have a reminder now. How long will it hold, this reminder? I don't know. Because we are human and we tend to forget. In 10 years, we'll go back to the same failures. That's what in the cyber domain that we have now, I agree with Yaron that if we have the three components of cyber domain, which are defense, intelligence, and attack, I always deliver the message that put most of your resources on defense, because you will be hit by your enemy, even if it's not the main effort, but you may be hit by your enemy, and you should be very well defended. Intelligence is important. You need intelligence, not only cyber, but if you invest in cyber, just make sure you have good intelligence. And only a fraction of it should go to offensive activity, because offensive is a very, very difficult and labor-consuming and resources-consuming activity. So this is my take for as an opening for this discussion.
Thank you, Colonel Siboni. Mr. Owen, not very optimistic when we're talking about cyber necessarily, but nonetheless, we do hear about a lot of phishing, which is a term that you may explain to our viewers very soon, and the efforts to basically unveil collection or the collection of information, of intelligence activities are done very often against various actors, be it for criminal purposes or security purposes. Give us a little bit of 2 cents on this whole conundrum.
So both Yaron and Gabi explain it very well. Because nations or military forces and intelligence agencies would rather keep their activities dormant until the moment they decide to hit the button, most of the threats come from criminal activity, ransomware, or other sort of scams. And if people, just civilians, lose their confidence in the banking system or in communications, or in hospitals, if their medical information is being stolen and disrupted, that could cause quite an impact, have quite an impact on the national confidence in the nation's ability to protect its citizens. And this is no less important than the other stuff. And as for offensive cyber, we have seen recently that President Trump ordered the Cyber Command and other agencies to stop offensive cyber operations against Russia. Perhaps this means that much as our guest said, there is only a marginal utility in employing offense when you have cyber activities, and better to invest in defense. And by the way, because so many Israeli high-tech and startup activities emanated out of the talents which the Israeli military and defense industries produced, it means that probably there is a lot to expect from these people and the new generation once there is a real cyber war.
Indeed. Well, much of the criminal activity, however, according to a number of individuals I've spoken with, are backed by state actors and directed then for the purpose of specific activities to disrupt and to really make the lives of the citizens of different countries harder, be it, of course, for banking purposes, but also just in the social domain, utilizing different schemes in order to establish a toxic discourse, which has been utilized against Israel for quite some time. General Rosen, we'll start with you. What needs to be taken into account from that perspective?
Countries need to defend their national assets, have to maintain their national security, and it's built out of national security is mainly three things, as you just mentioned. One is the economy. Two is the political order, the government and all of its bodies, the functioning governmental agencies. And three is the military apparatus. When any one of these three is attacked in whatever shape of form, the attackers they reach their goal, and they did something to hurt the economy. Now, crippling a country's economy is something very, very complicated to do only with cyber warfare. Cyber warfare is just one operational art used to do such things. Just as we're seeing the maximum pressure campaign right now on Iran, it's not done only in cyber. It is done also with cyber warfare, but it's done with economic sanctions, the international SWIFT, making it hard for Iranians to send money between countries, and so on and so forth. So the attacking a country for whatever reason is not going to cripple something so fast, but the amount of damage that you can cause can really be meaningful. I'll give a few examples. The Colonial Pipeline attack, which was more than a decade ago, it is a type of attack that crippled 1/3 of the United States' ability to provide gas to gas stations, okay? And through that, you understand how vulnerable critical infrastructure is and why you have to protect companies and help protect companies that don't even understand that they are critical infrastructure. What is the Colonial Pipeline Company? It's it's a few pumps and a few pump stations, and it's not like a high-tech company thinking about cybersecurity in the morning. But guess what? It provides the gas to 1/3 of the United States. So someone has to take care of that. That's why CISA, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, was formed to help structure the defense of the civilian critical infrastructure landscape. So you have to sort of form these things, because the amount of companies don't wake up in the morning and do defense. They do security for their own use, but they don't understand necessarily. They don't have the same understanding of the national security as nations should. That's why there's a government entity that is responsible for such defense. And in every country today, there is some kind of cyber authority that tries to defend all the forms of national power that I mentioned. That is where we are going. And the more we move forward, the more we go into this era of cyber warfare. And now we have AI in defense, but also in offense. It will be more and more complicated. So rockets will fall from the sky and malware will fall from the clouds. That's the best I can describe the future. This is how the world is right now, because we are in this era of everything digital, and the digital landscape turned into warfare landscape.
Which raises a point in the sense that, the more advanced a country is, particularly in the cyberspace, the more vulnerable it is. Is that not so, Professor Siboni?
I just want to, if you, with your permission, I'll go back to your point regarding state-sponsored, let's say, criminal organization. First of all, I would, advocate that the criminal side of cyberspace is in magnitude of maybe 100 more than the political side. What we are playing with Iran, with Russia, Ukraine, AI, influence operation, all very nice. But the criminal cyber domain is way bigger in volume and activity, in amount of players, and because there is money there. Consequently, there are some states that are using criminal organization for their own benefit. South Korea has a criminal organization, specializes, for example, in manipulating SWIFT transactions.
South Korea or North Korea?
Please.
South Korea?
North Korea.
North Korea.
North Korea.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, if I said South, I meant North. North Korea is making substantial income, maybe tens, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars on cyber scams with organization. They are not criminal organization, because I'm not sure there is crime in North Korea, but they are working on the criminal side. But this is one part. Iran is doing the same. Russia is doing the same. Using China, the same. Using criminal organization, either by directing them or paying them to do criminal activity in the cyber domain. You will not see a Russian bank being hacked by Russians, because if you're a Russian hacking a Russian bank, you'll probably find yourself floating in the Volga the day after. And you see this kind of activity, which state-sponsored criminal activity. But you don't need only state-sponsored. There are money-sponsored, criminal-sponsored that are looking for money. Many organizations are dealing with that. And I'll tell you that I think that if you are a cyber criminal, the probability that you will pay any cost, I mean, the chances that you will find yourself retiring with a large sum of money are very high. And you will not be caught, nothing, because we yet to find a way to enforce our, the law enforcement to try to find those criminals. Very difficult. Now, regarding these scenarios of Armageddon scenarios on cyber, both civil cyber, criminal cyber, or political cyber, we did not see them yet. Of course, okay, Colonial Pipelines, I agree, they did not, and for a few days, they did not supply. What happened? Okay. Aramco, with the big destruction of computers. It happens, but nothing compares. I apologize that I have to go back to the beginning. Nothing compares to the kinetic activity. Nothing compares to it. And we are making a demon out of cyber. And in the end, the damage is limited, very limited, and the resources we put are high, but not as we put on the kinetic side. And the kinetics, the damage in kinetics can be devastating. Well, we don't need to remind ourselves what happened. Yes, devastating. Look at the last 30 years. What kinetic activities can do. So cyber is really important. We need to protect ourselves. We need to do some, to collect intelligence. We need to do a variety of things. We should not forget our physical world and to make sure that we are not being slaved to the demon of cyber demon, like having things that let's go to the cyber domain and leave the rest. We should not do it.
With that being said, of course, if we were in a development phase of exponential development in the cybersphere since the early 2000s, maybe the mid-90s, now with AI, God knows how speed this whole development process will be. We are out of time, unfortunately. And with that, I would like to thank Colonel Professor Siboni and General Lozen. I want to thank you also, Mr. Oren. I didn't get out of this too optimistic, other than the point that we shouldn't open, URLs of Nigerian princes at that.
But it's commendable that our guests, who sometimes make their living off cyber, were not afraid to undercut it.
Well, they put everything in perspective. And with that, I'd like to thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem. Shalom.
As the geostrategic landscape continues to shift at unprecedented speed, Deep Dive is a weekly update you cannot afford to miss.
There is zero chance that Iran will back away from its terror support.
We have a direct threat against Russian interests.
That's what's at stake. It's not Syria. It's a Middle Eastern order.
Whoever has the most guns, whoever has the most money, the most backing, that's who's going to be in charge.
From Jerusalem to Washington, watch now, Hudson Institute's Deep Dive.